Okay, so I've got a sketch. I got a program, a sketch is what we call them in P5JS, right here that draws this robot. So we have this nice little robot. Now, I want to create a function that will draw the robot. Okay, this is very similar to some of the stuff we've done already. So what we're going to do is we're going to come down to the bottom after setup. So remember, setup is everything that is between these two curly braces. So we need to be outside of setup. Okay, I'm going to zoom that back a little bit. So we need to be outside of setup. I'm going to create a new function using the function keyword. And I'm going to make a nice descriptive function name called drawRobot. Not so bad, right? And I'm going to do an open curly brace, and I'm good to go. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab all of this, and for now, I'm just going to copy it and paste it down here inside of our drawRobot function. All right. And now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take everything that was right here before and I'm going to turn it into comments. That way I don't lose it by accident. All right. So the easiest way to do that is after you've got it highlighted, you hold on the Mac, you're going to hold Command and then hit slash, or on Windows, Control and slash, and it'll make it all comments. So now when I run it, literally nothing happens. But I didn't want to lose those because I'm going to start changing all of these values down here, and it's going to get very confusing very quickly. All right, and then I'm going to call the drawRobot function up in my setup. So now it'll draw it again. So far so good, because down below we have defined it using the function keyword, and then we have to call it. This is like using the word in a sentence. So below we defined it, we added a word to our dictionary, and up top we're just going to call it. Now I want to add parameters so that I can draw multiple copies of this little robot. I'm going to use XPOS and YPOS because that's what I do. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a point that is my reference point. Where should this robot be drawn from? And I've decided I'm going to draw it from that red eye in the middle of his head. That's the point that when I say this is where the robot is, that's where the robot is. And so as that turns out, that's right here. Here's where the red fill happens. So my reference point is going to be right here. And that's going to be 125, 170. I'm just going to put that there so that I don't lose those numbers. Let me move this so that we can have that all in one line. Nice. Now, so this is going to become XPOS, and this is going to be YPOS. Not so bad, right? So now when up here, I need to take those same numbers that I just said were 125, 170, and I need to put them inside of here. And now when I run it, again, it should look exactly the same. Now, what I like to do is I like to say, let's call it again. So as I'm building this function, if I mess something up, I'll be able to see it very easily. So I'm going to pick a completely different point. So something like, oh, I don't know, 200, 50. So I'm going to draw two robots. And right now you can see when I draw the two robots, I just get, the one eye. So the eye vanished from my original robot because I'm still drawing all of these other shapes. Okay, so it's actually still there, but we can't see it. And I'll show you that in just a second as we go. So now everything that is in reference to an X and a Y needs to now be made relative to XPOS and YPOS. You with me? Everything that is an X or a Y needs to be made relative to XPOS and YPOS. So right now, XPOS, right here, when it was 125, the ellipse for the ear, for this ear, the ellipse for this ear was drawn at 100, 175. So if I'm going to go from 125 to 100, this is going to be XPOS minus 25. And I got to go from 170 to 175, so this is going to be YPOS plus 5. And now when I run that, we'll see our new ear appears at the right spot over there. And then we just keep going, and we do the exact same thing for all of these. everything that references an x or a y in any of our functions needs to now be changed. So this line, you'll see there's no references for x or y, but in this function we have x, comma y, comma width, comma height, and you'll notice, hey, I've got a fifth argument in my rectangle function. As it turns out, if I add a fifth argument, it adds rounded corners. I kind of like that, so that's why I did that. All right, so 100 relative to 125. Again, this is going to be x pos minus 25. And then 150 relative to 170. This is going to be y pos minus 20. All right, see, it's coming together. And then this, so 125 compared to 125, that's just going to be x pos. And 170 compared to 170, that's just going to be y pos. And there we go. I'm going to do this for the, well, I'll just keep going. 125, reference to 125, this is just going to be x pos. 170 to 260, how do I get from 170 to 260? I add 90. So this is going to be y pos plus 90. And now I can run that. Oh, there we go. That looks like it's in the right spot. And then I've got one last one to do. How do I get to 90 from 125? 190, so that's going to be minus 35. And then from 170 to 200, that's going to be y 30. And there we go. Now I've got two robots that look identical, and I could draw as many as I want. And I can put them anywhere I want. So the first robot was hard. The other robots, once we get our robot function, are very easy to create. And again, any functions that we have that are going to reference anything relative to x or y need to be changed inside of here. So far, so good. Anything that we're going to reference that's going to change. Now, I could also have done something different and said, you know, I want the robots to be different shades of blue. I could do that by adding another function, in which case then I would need to make sure that my functions reference the blue value rather than anything else. So let's go ahead and show that. Let's say I wanted the blues to be different potentially. I'm going to leave the eye alone and the wheel alone, but I just want the blues to be different. So I'm going to add a third one called amount blue. And we can see we've got two different functions, or two different fills, right here and right here, and then also down on the body that all deal with the amount of blue. So I'm going to say I want the body to be the amount of blue that I'm going to change. So if I change, so the head and the body, well, actually, as it changes, the amount of blue that I have is the same. It's the amount of green that I'm changing to change my shade of color. So I'm actually going to change that to amount green. And I'm going to make the base value 170 because that is the amount of green that the head and body have. All right, so then that means anywhere in my fills where for green 170 appears, I'm going to write amount. And I'm going to do the same thing here. And then this is going to be 100 is how much less than 170? Because I want the proportion of color or shade to be the same. So this is amount minus 70 because that is exactly. Now we got to go back and add for these other ones. Let's make a closer to teal one. And then let's make a darker one. So now you can see we've got three different robots that are all slightly different shades and of blue because I changed the amount of green that was in them while leaving the amount of blue the same. So it's another way that you can use parameters. We often use them for X and Y position, but we can use them for color, we can use them for stroke weight, we can use them for just about anything. We just have to think about how all of the functions are going to use those values. And so for X and Y position, any of the functions that we use that use an X or Y as one of the parameters, we will need to change if we're going to have X and Y position as parameters for our draw robot function. If we're going to change something about the color, we have to think about how that's going to play out in any of the color functions. I didn't want the eye to change color, so I left the fills for the eyes alone. So this is the fill for the eye. We got the white of the eye and the red of the eye. I didn't want those to be different. I left those alone. I also didn't want the wheel to change color, so I left its fill alone. So the only fills I changed were the ones that I wanted to change potentially color for the different robots. Make sense? All right, so your task today is to turn your robot that you created a couple of weeks ago into a function so that we can draw the robot easily in multiple places around our screen. That is your task. You at a minimum have to be able to draw it in multiple places. If you want, you can add an extra parameter to change something else about your robot as well, but you do not have to. So that is today's task.